Thank you, Lord.
Hi, David. How are you?
Good evening. I am fine.
This is Nancy. Good to see you.
So just so everybody online knows or virtually knows that this is being recorded now. The meeting hasn't officially started yet, and let me know if you have any issues with the sound or anything. I started troubleshooting that in So you have a list of choices.
I couldn't hear you now. They do make them basically the ones that he would get. I don't want to walk around because I'm going to go all the time. So I think Donnie asked my sister to see close up and was far away. Yeah, they really
I can show it to them if they want. We can start whenever you want.
Hey, good evening, everybody. I drew the short straw. I was asked to chair the meeting tonight. So, welcome to our April meeting of the Fish and Wildlife Board. And the first thing I will do is take attendance, just to make roll call for the record service here. And I'll go by order that I have listed here. Brian Perry, Jamie Dragon.
Here.
She said here, she's going to be virtual.
Michael Bancroft. Here. Brad Ferlin here. David Rodard.
Here.
Nancy Matthews.
Here.
Marty Van Buren.
Yeah. Here.
Michael Stolzman.
Here.
Ryan Bailey. Here. Jay Sweeney. Here. David Dean. I saw David on there somewhere. Okay, the first item on the agenda is the approval of the previous meeting minutes and for the month of February. Any comments, any changes, minutes, stuff for the mustaches. Ryan. Add it back. All right, so
I could see this. I figured.
any other minutes? acknowledgements. Okay.
I moved to approve the minutes.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Roll call quickly. Brian McCarthy. Aye. Amy Dragon.
Aye.
For the approval of the minutes. Michael Bancroft.
Yes.
Brad is yes. Dave Kovlar.
Yes.
Nancy Matthews.
Yes.
Marty Van Buren.
Yes.
Michael Polson.
Yes.
Brian Bailey.
Yeah.
Dave Sweeney.
Yes.
David Dean.
Yes. And as has been mentioned, the audio is really poor.
He's not. It's a
It's
TV.
not muted, the TV is being tricky, but I think I can get it here. David, can you repeat that, please?
Audio is really poor.
I'm also having a hard time turning my camera on. If anybody has any suggestions.
The camera function is typically in the upper right corner of your browser.
It's right in the middle of my screen, but it won't allow me to turn the camera on. When I click it, it does nothing.
Is this your first time using Teams?
No, I've used it before.
I'm not sure about that. I can try to troubleshoot. As long as we can hear you, I think that's a good thing for now.
Okay.
Oh yeah, is the camera slider by your viewer open?
Camera slider. Viewer.
No, like physically where your camera is pointing.
Yes, that's on. Let me try. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything in settings. I guess if you guys don't need to see me, then it's fine.
What browser are you using?
I'm using Chrome.
Okay, sorry.
Jamie, we'll proceed. If you can figure it out, great. If not, as long as you can hear us, that is half the battle.
Okay.
Okay, next on the agenda is public comments. We'll first start with anybody here who's here in person. Is there anybody here? Okay, we're going to get 2 minutes and introduce yourself. Go with that. Thanks.
Kevin Lawrence, Newberry, former board member. I just thinking I've seen the agenda, yes, work on BMPs. I thought I'd pass around some of the products of Vermont furs, just to pass around and see how we use them around here. I'm a trap ready instructor, and I'm taking time to kind of look at the people who are taking our trapping classes now. There's just a lot of people who are interested in utilizing fur. It's amazing. The desire to get out there in the woods is people who don't hunt and fish necessarily are taking trapping classes. And it's great that they're taking the lessons, learning to do it correctly, and enjoying their time. So wanted to say that. I know tonight you're going to hear a little work on the BMP, which I think is something the trappers are going to probably support with great gusto. They've been doing it for years anyway. Thank you for your time on the board. I know it's not a situation where you think sometimes all the supporters are talking to you, but believe me, they really appreciate your work. It's so important what you do. Everything you do relates to us taking things home from the outdoors and bringing it home. So, Title 10 says it will be a healthy and abundant population, and that's what you folks help maintain. So I hope you continue that work and keep those things in mind as you're working forward. So thank you for your work.
Thank you. Anybody else in person?
evening. Bill Pickens, board member. We have two petitions in front of us tonight. One is the BMP petition. And the Vermont trappers have worked on that for years. It's coming to fruition. See it talked about, worked on. We think some of the suggestions on that are good for trapping public to and to use. The second petition you had is on coyote season. I know a coyote season was before this board a couple of years ago and didn't go through. I'm here tonight to ask you to proceed with it. I think it's time we had that talk and we went over it. Decide what we're going to do on the coyote season. I think they deserve it. Should go forward.
Thank you.
Hmm.
Else, from the public? Okay, now we'll move on to those that are online, and Ally will kind of monitor and determine who's up in the new queue. And just a reminder, everyone has 2 minutes, and Ally will be tracking that also. Make sure we stay within that time.
Okay, so the first hand up is Brenna Galdenzi. Brenna would be like, when you begin, I'll start timing you, okay?
Okay, can you just tell me if you can hear me first?
Yeah, we can
There.
hear you.
Great. Okay. So it's Brenna Galdenzi from Protect Our Wildlife. One quick comment on the BMPs and trapping. I don't think there is any way to make a leg hold, AKA foothold trap, ever humane, whether you're putting a thin laminate strip or padding. I just don't think that's possible. Unfortunately, I couldn't hear what Mr. Pickens was saying. I was interested, the audio was off. As far as the coyote, the open season on coyotes, we often hear Commissioner Herrick say that, we need to get the emotion out of things. And I agree to some extent, but a lot of the policies that Fish and Wildlife sets is based in emotion. I mean, I don't really comment much on the deer regs, but you won't hear more emotion than from deer hunters talking about, antlerless permits. The open season on coyotes is completely based in emotion. It's not based at all in science. Science tells us that hunting coyotes, unless you're killing off 75% of the population continually every single year, hunting coyotes does absolutely nothing to reduce the population. And in fact, it creates increased breeding and also disruptions to the pack's social hierarchy, which can cause problems with coyotes where you didn't have them before. So science would tell you just to ban coyote hunting and just kill those coyotes who are causing problems. Science does not tell us to have an open season. So a compromise would be a regulated coyote hunting season, like we have a trapping season. It would require that the animal be utilized for their pelts. And I think that's a great compromise. But when I hear take the emotion out of wildlife policy, I get really confused because a lot of the policies that you set are in fact based in value judgments and emotion. So, and I look forward to hearing Chris Shadler. Thank you for representing on behalf of the Vermont Coyote Coalition.
Who else would like to
Thank
speak
you.
that's participating online right now? Okay, Chris, you can, when you start, I'll begin timing you.
Alice, are you speaking to me?
Yes, I am. When you begin speaking, I'll start timing.
Okay, I'm Chris Shadler from New Hampshire, and I'm here to take part in the conversation around the regulation of coyotes. I'm not sure of the process here. Am I supposed to make a statement here, or will I be allowed to participate in the conversation?
Chris, this is Brad. This is just a 2-minute comment for a public comment on anything that you want in front of the board. We have on the agenda as number 5 to speak specifically to your petition, and you'll have 10 minutes
Yes.
to speak to your petition. So now it's just
Okay, thank you. I'll hold. Right. Well, no, I'll wait. I'll wait until the conversation comes around. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I see there's a Cameron, I can't see your full name, but there's a Cameron with their hand up. You can begin speaking. And Chris, if you put your hand down, please, that'll be listed.
Yep, can you hear me? I'm Kristen Cameron.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So I'll be super quick. So I'm Kristen Cameron. I'm a Vermont resident, and I just want to also support the regulated season on coyotes. I agree with Brenna that science would tell you not to hunt them at all and let them regulate themselves as our apex predators, and that our season is really a compromise. So I support that. I also agree that traps are inherently inhumane. And so I don't support any changes to that don't include getting rid of leg hole traps altogether. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any others virtually who would like to participate in a public comment period?
I'm on the phone and would like to do a comment.
Yep, just please state your name and where you're from before you begin.
Sure. My name is Barbara Felitti. I live in Huntington, Vermont, and I'm speaking to support the ban on an open hunting season on coyotes and the establishment of a regulated season. I have also heard Commissioner Herrick and his staff talk about dialing down the temperature on issues like this. And in my opinion, the best way to dial down the temperature is to know that you, being Fish and Wildlife Department and the Fish and Wildlife Board, are not just listening, but that you're acting on what you hear. Taking comment and ignoring it is very disempowering, and it's a really good way to raise at least my temperature. I've heard Kim Royer on VPR talking about coyote hunting, and she acknowledged that public opinion about it is changing. What is missing is any reflection that the Fish and Wildlife Department and the board are responsive to public opinion along with the science. We used to allow dogfighting and cockfighting. They are now banned in all 50 states. Traditions change. A more humane approach to coyote hunting is needed, and Vermont should be a leader and not a laggard in this area. And thank you very much for taking my comment.
You're welcome. Cameron, do you have more to say? Your hand is up. Is there anybody else in the virtual room that would like to speak?
Okay, thank you everyone for the comments. Next item on the agenda is the 2022 migratory game bird season. David, we might see an alternative and staff to give us an update and make their final recommendations for us for our final. The migratory game bird season.
Okay, well, Mark, do you want me to just introduce David Sawville? Yeah, I will in a second. I just want to first thank the board members that came to our 2 public hearings. One of those, we actually live streamed like this, and it's actually was really pleased that we're able to do it. Thanks to the staff for making that happen. We had most of the participants that was at the Essex office were folks who decided to live stream in. So, and we got very little opposition to anything that was proposed. The one issue that came up, I'm going to have David Sawville talk about it in the proposal. So basically, you're looking at the same proposal that was presented to you earlier, was that folks had a concern of us ending the season on Christmas Day. And that came up, I think, at maybe both hearings on that. So we went back and the drawing board, and David's going to present to you the one change. Everything else is the same. David, if you can talk about that, and then also highlight to the board, if they approve the recommendation here tonight with an affirmative, then what the next process will be for the commissioner. So David Sawville, most of you folks have met him. He's wearing the dual hat of our big game chief right now, and also still our waterfall project leader.
And I will say, to my perspective, the comments are fairly low and mild. Usually there's a lot of different opinions when we hold the waterfowl hunting season. But we just didn't seem to get those this year. But again, thanks to the board members for coming to the hearings.
As Mark said, we held 2 public meetings since the approval of the original recommendations on February 16th. And we had them on March 9th and 10th, in the Madison area and in the Essex Motion area. Said very light comments, probably the quietest year I've seen in 20 plus years I've been going to these meetings. And the only change we made in the recommendations, as he said, were for the Lake Champlain. Instead of, I'll just go over the interior zone, it's going to be October 15th, December 13th with the recommendation. Within the Lake Champlain zone, we originally proposed October 15th to the October 23rd, and beginning again on November 5th, and then on December 25th. The people who chose not to want to have it on that last weekend of Christmas, we moved that last segment earlier 1 week. So we're recommending October 29th and ending the season on December 8th. All the other seasons are the same as then in February. Once the recommendations are approved here, what we'll do is update the tables, present that information to the public on our website in 1 or 2 days, get that updated and downloaded. And then after that, we will fill out the selection forms for the Federal Register. I'll get the information from the New Hampshire side for the Connecticut River Zone once they have their meeting, and then the commissioner has to sign off on it before submit it to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for review. So that's due by April 30th to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I don't know if you want to go through any of the recommendations or if you have any questions on them.
Some of those date changes again, back in a week.
Correct. The packet I gave you, I actually think I put, I remember that. So the packet I gave you is the new recommendation. We'll start it on October 20th.
I think it was good because that's what everybody wanted and asked.
Question on the that second resident who season. Last meeting you said you had to get approval for that. Have you spent anything on that at all, or? That's
The December goose season.
Right, that has been approved before we can move ahead.
It is, okay.
So that would run from December 1st to January 21st. December 1st is the earliest I can open that by the spring.
Any other questions for David?
I've got a question, not sure it's for David, maybe Mark may be better to answer this. One of the comments that came up during public comment that I've had some personal experience with, bass tournaments on opening day of duck season. Bass hunters, or bass fishermen coming into areas where hunters are trying to hunt. Is there a way that, what's the feasibility of not issuing tournament permits for opening weekend of duck season? I mean, bass fishermen, fishermen can fish whatever, but I think having a tournament can conflict with, can create opportunities for conflict with bass fishermen and duck hunters, and I have witnessed that.
I don't know the answer. I do know we do not issue any permits for the youth waterfowl weekend. So we control that. I do know, David, because you work with Tammy who does those permits in the Essex. I don't, my guess is some of those permits are being issued from New York. Bass tournaments, not Vermont.
Right.
But I may be wrong.
They are applying for those tournaments often in January and February to set them up for later in the year. And we're not setting these regulations until March, April, which is earlier than we've had in the past. So any of the early permits would be hard to eliminate them. And I was talking with some of our fisheries biologists about that. He reminded me, says, not every bass boat is a tournament. If you've been on the lake, I've been on there late fall. There were a lot of anglers out there that time of year, and with the way the climate's warming, they keep pushing it later and later
stay on the lake and actually enjoy themselves being.
And I know there's no control over that. My concern is if we're issuing fast permits to have a larger number than normal fishermen on an open and weekend duck season. It creates potential conflict. And I witnessed bass boats come into Lyman Bay last year, and I thought we were gonna have to shoot down. It was, a lot of work for exchange, and I think it could probably prevent some of that conflict. There's no tournament permits issued for that.
We could discuss that, I think, and see now that we know what the date will be after this meeting, and from this point forward, not sure, but it is going to leave open the New York side, which a lot of the tournament.
The challenge, as you point out, is not only with these bass tournaments, it's everywhere you decide to go hunting or duck hunting too. I'm an inland hunting, and I run into sometimes people canoeing down through the river where it's at. I just accept it as part of it. Some of the folks I talk to actually welcome that behavior some days on a bluebird sunny day. I see kind of wants to nod his head to deal with this issue because it gets the ducks moving around. So it's really difficult when we start picking one use over another. But you're right, it's legitimate, it's brought up. My perspective, and David, you can back me up, I hear from a few people almost every year. I don't hear from 50, 60, 100 people on this issue. I do know some people that will say they welcome the opportunity when they've been sitting in their blind. This is even on Champlain, watching their empty decoys and have some ducks get spooked up half a mile away. But you're hitting on a much bigger challenge for us as we move forward. So all people who enjoy the outdoors can use it together. And it's a very, very challenging for a state agency to go down and start petitioning out when you can participate or not. Now, maybe the people that sit in this room 5, 10 years from now, the magnitude growth for, we got to figure out what to do. Right now, the best approach is controlling the permits we issue and also doing education. But it does not take away. There is some bad behavior, but I think we see it everywhere. We've seen it with people letting their dogs loose during bow season, people out hiking. So I don't have an easy fix or remedy, to be honest with you. Did you ask? I don't know if the commissioner wants to weigh in. You're a duck hunter yourself. You've probably seen what Jay's talking about.
What I've also seen is duck hunters in conflict with other duck hunters.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think if we look at the number of times that happens versus fishermen, anglers versus duck hunters, probably not as bad sort of ladder.
I just, I did law enforcement on Northern Lake Champlain for a lot of years. And, bass tournaments, there was some bass tournaments here and there. And now it seems like there's a bass tournament every week. So it's.
Well, we can certainly take a look. In terms of the volume of them. I don't measure from that's not sure.
Okay, good. Any other questions?
David Dean has his hand up.
Okay, David? David Dean?
Yeah, I didn't hear the last part of the commissioner's remarks. The microphone's away from him. And I think he offered an approach, or at least some thoughts about an approach.
I don't know where I lost you, David. But what I was saying was I've seen conflict between duck hunter and duck hunter as well. And I'm not sure that, well, it is a concern. I don't think it merits us taking some drastic action at this point. But I thought we could at least look at the number of bass tournaments to get a sense of how that compares.
Thank you.
Just I have a quick question about bass tournaments. I know it's not what we're talking about, but about this conflict. Are there multiple tournaments on the lake at the same time? Is it usually just one tournament that encompasses entirely?
It's usually just one, has been my experience, because when they have one, it's a big one. And, you don't want to compete with another tournament for fishermen.
Yeah. Okay.
Have you given any thought to this proposal about the wood comp season? Because I heard from several other wood comp representatives. So, what do you think about that?
Moving it a few days later to end of Friday
Or
before.
a little later, so we're shooting flight birds rather than.
I'm waiting a little bit to see what the study comes back from Humane. It's interesting, the first 2 years, a lot of their birds that flew early November, they went way over our state down in Pennsylvania and New York. So I know we get birds from Quebec and other provinces, but I also had a lot of people that were interested in having it earlier, starting the small game season. Because when they hunt inland, not in the Champlain Valley, the ground's freezing up and they're done in early November. So, you know, that may change in the future too with warming climate. So that was one person at that point. I haven't heard from anybody else other than
So one last question. Can you explain again the youth season and moose season limit conflict that?
So on the youth weekend, if you were out with a youth hunting for waterfowl, general waterfowl, ducks, geese together, they have to follow the federal limits that are set for the regular duck season. So during the regular season, you're allowed one Canada goose. This year, our resident season overlaps both days of the youth weekend. So they can either choose to go youth waterfowl hunting for both ducks and geese. If they choose to go just goose hunting with other family members, they can actually shoot 8 geese in the field or 8 geese in a lake line that has nothing but goose decoys, or at least they should be shooting at anything other than geese. They have other conference decoys out there as well. So that is confusing this year. This provides more opportunity for different variety of people. Most years we either have 1 or 0 days of overlapping. It's much cleaner.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Not, do I have any recommendation or motion?
You look for a motion to accept the recommendations as changed.
Yes.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. So does everybody know what the motion on the table is? To accept the 2022-23 waterfowl season recommendations presented by the departments with the changes we just discussed. Brian McCarthy. Jamie Dragon.
Yes.
Michael Bancroft.
Yes.
Brad Ferlin, yes. David Rebelard.
Yes.
Nancy Matthews.
Yes.
Artie Van Buren.
Yes.
Michael Colson.
Yes.
Brian Bailey. Yes. Jay Sweeney.
Yes.
David Dean.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Okay, yes says 11, 0 no, 0 abstentions. Thank you. Okay, next up on the agenda is the 2022 moose season recommendations, the final procedural votes. Commissioner, I'll turn it over to you and your staff.
Mark, do you want to introduce this?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. The department recommends the same proposal that Nick presented to you at the meeting that you initially adopted. And that's looking for 100 permits. 40 of those, I guess, being for cows, 60 being for bulls there. I think just to save you time, Nick can answer any questions that you have. We held 3 public meetings held in conjunction with deer. We also hosted another meeting virtual, which we got a lot of good positive comments from people who can't attend that meeting, hearings in person. And great turnout at most of the hearings from your fellow board members that were there. I thank them again for coming, helping to facilitate the processes that we were there. I think to me, seeing firsthand the people and the questions they had at the hearings, and I think board members could also comment on this, is what we noticed too is hard for some of the folks to understand the concept and the relationship between the number of moose on the landscape and the abundance of ticks, and how those ticks affect the health of the moose. Overall, right now, our moose herd in the state of Vermont is stable, pretty much throughout the state. It's strongest in the Northeast Kingdom, Wildlife Management E, that's 1 and 2, but it's not healthy still. And from the research that we've done, that comes back to the ticks. You asked me this question about 15, 20 years ago. Our research at that time, when we saw a slight concern on moose health, was related to habitat and too many moose on the landscape with their own browsing impacts that they were having on the forest up there. So I also want to highlight my exclamation point, then I'm going to turn it over to you, Nick. And I'd asked Nick to spend a couple minutes with you again, since to me, this was the biggest issue at the hearings for people understanding it. It was also the biggest issue that we generated a lot of emails that came into the department on this moose proposal. It was primarily about ticks and the approach the department was taking to do that. So I'm going to ask him to address that with you. But before they do that, I want to highlight in the proposal that Nick gave you, it was on page 11. It does deal with this tick issue. And it's basically, bottom line is a poll done on Vermont residents. 65% of them, this was done in 2019, support maintaining a smaller moose population through hunting if it reduces the number of moose that die each year from winter ticks. Only 15% opposed that approach, and that was through this survey here that we have on our website that you all can access. It's from Responsive Management that has an incredible resume throughout North America, working with many fish and wildlife agencies, probably all of them actually, in the US here, as well as other countries abroad. But the title of the survey was Vermont Residents and Hunters Attitudes Towards Big Game Hunting and Management. It was conducted in 2019. So the key question that we asked was that one right there. And we also asked, that was another interesting question, was on moose hunting and management. Residents, these are not hunters, but residents of the state of Vermont that we looked at, were presented with 4 issues currently facing Vermont's moose population. Were asked to indicate how much they know about each. In general, awareness is low, is what the survey found. Very same thing that we noticed at the public hearings that you folks witnessed firsthand. Even when we give a little talk, it'd be the same kind of questions coming back to do that. So I leave with you that it is not an easy, straightforward understanding to understand the science behind a host that creates the ticks to be increased in numbers. And this tick we're talking about too, I would say the knowledge out there is not strong there. People experience with a tick here in the state of Vermont is a deer tick or a dog tick. We're not talking about that tick. We're talking about a winter tick, which goes mostly by the name of moose tick, because it is the numbers of moose, the size of them on the landscape, that's driving the high numbers of moose themselves. So I just want to leave you with that exclamation point. I think board members at those hearings could probably attest that probably was the #1 comment that Nick had to respond to later. But Nick, if you could just walk us through a few minutes again on that part, and then we're happy to answer any questions you have at all. So basically on the input, we didn't change. Nothing new came to us that indicated new information data to change our recommendation. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, so I'll just go over, the tick question, because we did get it a lot. It was the most common comment and or question we got was, what are we doing about ticks, or why can't we just treat ticks directly instead of killing moose? And I mean, I've presented this all to you, but just so we're all clear and so you all can answer questions should you get them.
Winter tick is not a deer tick or a dog tick. It's a different species of tick. So people tell you, well, aren't these just on other species? Aren't these on deer? No, this is a whole different tick, completely different life cycle. This is not the ticks people are familiar with. They don't spread disease. We try to avoid using words like native with insects because we don't really know 3 decades ago what was here, what wasn't. But as far as we do know, winter ticks have been here as long as moose have. The other ticks that people are more familiar with are moose. Moose and winter ticks is a relationship that's existed for a long time. What has changed over time is the abundance of moose. That drives winter tick abundance because the life cycle of winter tick, they're over, they're a single host tick. They're spending 5 or 6 months on the same animal. Any animal that grooms itself and does a half decent job at that is going to dislodge most of those ticks at some point in that life cycle. There's actually a month or 2, maybe even longer period in there when those ticks are basically hibernating. It's called diapause, but how they're able to extend their life cycle to not have to drop off in the middle of winter. So they're not even like bit into the moose for 1 to 2 months. They're just on. So any animal that grooms is going to dislodge most of those things. That's why deer don't carry very many. Some certainly, bears, coyotes. Will they have some? Yes, that's how winter ticks have persisted in the world. But they don't carry the tens of thousands that moose carry. That's why the number of moose is what drives the abundance of winter ticks. A couple other things I want to highlight. A lot of people questioned, suggested we pursue the fungal pathogen that's the research that's come out of UVM. Again, I've been over this, but we're a long way from ever even thinking about applying that in the field. It's great. It works in a terrarium in a lab. It kills ticks. We have no idea if it would actually be effective in the natural environment. And even if it was, there's a whole host of potential side effects we'd have to consider. Not to mention how would we even apply it? Aerial broadcast, 600 square miles of moose range with some fungus. We have no idea how we would do that. So even if that pans out and turns out to be an option in the future, it's a long way out. And realistically, I don't know if it will ever be a practical means of treating or addressing winter ticks directly. The other important thing there is, as long as we have the abundance of moose we have, if we stop treating ticks, they're just going to come right back, right? Or if they become immune to the treatment, they're just going to come right back. As long as we have this abundance of moose. Excuse me. And the other point I want to make related to this that I think gets lost, in part because we have focused so much on the need to reduce the abundance of ticks. We've kind of lost sight of just how many moose we have in E still, and what we would be doing in the absence of them. And the reality is, our current density of moose in E is as many moose as we would ever like to have, even in a world without winter ticks. This was our goal in the previous big game plan when we weren't even considering winter ticks. That's where we are right now. If we had more moose than we currently do, we would start to see habitat impacts, widespread habitat impacts again. So even if we had this wonderful magical tool where we could eliminate winter ticks or greatly reduce the abundance of winter ticks, the result of that would be that moose would be much healthier, which is great. It's what we want. But that means they're surviving better and they're reproducing more. So the population is going to grow faster. That would actually require more moose to be killed every year just to hold the population where it's at from growing than what we're currently trying to do. So it's not a way to avoid hunting, to go out and try to address winter ticks, right? We have a lot of moose in need. We would be hunting them probably even in the absence of winter ticks. And even if we could treat them, it doesn't negate the need to actually limit the population of moose as part of the state. Any questions on the recommendation? It is unchanged. You know, we didn't get any new information from any of the comments or meetings, so nothing's changed.
Going forward, I know we got pockets of, I'll use C for example, the whole unit of C is not really moose habitat, but there are pockets. Doing any studies in those pockets to see that moose are conjugating in that area, they live in that area, and they're exceeding the moose per square mile as results, even though as a whole unit, you're looking at maybe half a moose per square mile, but the reality is that that's not habitat you want them in anyway. So are we looking at moose densities where it is suitable to have those moose?
That's something we're hoping to do. It depends on our capacity to actually get it done, but we have some new research. Kind of a peripheral part of our moose study was looking at that use. And we're able to build on that, get some other stuff, and we are hoping to kind of exactly what you're saying, kind of better assess what we should be calling moose habitat. Currently, anything that's forest is called moose habitat, even if it's a 10-acre lot surrounded by cornfield. It's better assessing what is moose habitat, and then hopefully getting at. Maybe it helps us address those pockets. I think that's always going to be a challenge. So we manage at the WMU scale, and once you start getting into the smaller areas, it's always going to be tough, but we are hoping to try to keep that out.
Well, kind of segue into that, have we ever considered, or should we be considering, like some states do, we have wildlife management units here, should we look at changing the units, either unit sizes, something to make the moose more manageable in those small pockets? We don't have to worry about all of C. There may be a portion of C where you make a C1 or a C2 to better manage those areas. Is that a consideration that we should be thinking about, or the agency?
I mean, it's something to think about, something we have thought about.
It's a good point. As we go forward, keeping, we're gonna have the ability to, one, come up with a defined area. That these folks can also work with the monitor for enforcement, but also to be able to collect enough data, have a handle on it. We're not locked in like we are on the wildlife management. Well, yes, we are. I don't know if they have to lose dogs. I'd have to check on that. Legally, we were locked into not changing wildlife management unit boundaries by statute for every 10 years. And we like it that way, because if we keep adjusting those around, then our data collection and our statistics and models, we have real difficulty monitoring trends in. So that's a consideration. I'd have to check with what we could do on that one. But anyways, it's not a bad idea. It's something that
it's you know, one of those considerations, and kind of related to the David's question. You know, I don't know which WMU is a good example, but you know, depending how we define moose habitat, right? If we limit the size of forest blocks have to be bigger than a certain size, or whatever, however we might do that, that may sort of, it wouldn't define the unit for us, but it would change what our density is. You know, maybe we still have people hunt in all of C if we're going to go that route, recognizing that all of the moose may have bigger portion, that sort of thing. But yeah, some sort of moose subunit, if you will, something like that, that's consideration. We have to.
Bernard has a question about the breakdown of the public comment on the moose hunt and how many were for and how many were against the chat function.
It's a board meeting.
Oh, so we can't answer that. Okay.
Send an email. You can send an email.
Okay, can you repeat that message?
Yeah, Brenna, if you have a question around something that's been said in this section of the meeting, go ahead and send an email and we'll respond to your email for you. Thank you. I would just like to add 2 comments. I went to the meeting up in Lake Region and sat at one of the tables, and you know, it was good to hear a lot of the people that were there who don't really know what the right answer is about moose and how to manage moose issues. But it was nice to hear a lot of people say, we'll have to leave it to the science, let the science drive what we do. Of course, I quickly found out that one of those individuals was Nick's dad. So, so I had very good things to say about Nick, but anyway, he did a great job, and he was a good participant. But to my other point is that I think there's a very big misunderstanding across the state, not necessarily up in the Northeast Kingdom, where they have a better understanding of the moose population, some of the challenges, but across the rest of the state of why we're having hunts, and specifically targeting it to the Northeast Kingdom, and that we don't want to get back to where we were in the early 2000s or mid 2000s. That's not our target. And that's where we never want to be. I think that's just lost on a lot of people. And so they hear that we're taking 100 moose, and they're relating it to what the moose population is down in Brattleboro or what it is down in Addison County. And so it's just kind of working through that conversation with people to get them to understand that, it takes time, but I think that's just a big misunderstanding.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's been an issue all along. It's why I put that E, not
Yeah,
E
and everything else.
It's been a common theme. People, often even hunters, don't really understand when we talk about one unit versus other units. One is one thing, right? But it's not. So yeah, we're only focused on E. The rest of the state, I mean, we'd like to see more moose in the rest of the state. I don't know if we ever will with the habitat, but we would like to. Very different objectives there.
I wasn't in person, I attended by stuff. And I'm wondering, was the presentation as clear to the people there as it was to me at home? Because I thought you did a brilliant job with the graphs of these moose, these ticks, how many ticks are on the moose. I thought it explained it extremely clearly. Did they not get that presentation?
I think my sense is people who were at the hearings, whether virtual or in person, more or less, I mean, they don't get everything, but they more or less understood the concept. And they were, like Brad alluded to, they were like, yeah, let's follow the science. They were generally supportive. Yeah, most of the opposition seemed to come from people who had not. But, as say it was all one way or the other. Yeah, I think people who sat through the presentation got the gist of it. That doesn't mean they still didn't totally understand winter ticks versus other ticks.
But you think they got a comparable dose of what you were saying that we did on the.
Oh yeah, if not better, because they actually interact a little more.
I think what helped, Brian, was that we had the live hearings. We were able to have a live response afterwards. And we're not always able to do that every hearing. You have 100 people there and all 100 people speak, you just run out of time. You got to be reasonable. But when we can, this year we were able to do that. Of the nature of the work groups, we were actually able to have a real good discussion again the second time with people. But if the board got a copy in your packet, I think it's like 30 pages of loose public comments in the appendix here. I encourage you to look through all those. There is quite a different flavor you'll see from the emails that came in versus the public hearings and the questions that were generated. So I think to your point, Chair, we do have an awful lot of work ahead of us always to have people understand not only wildlife management, to understand the relationship, the complexity of moose hunting and ticks and what we're trying to do. And you're absolutely right. But so we're actually really thankful, to be my point, to have those hearings where we can interact with people. And to be honest with you, a couple of years ago, we went and did some intentional information meetings where we didn't have to sit there and react on the regulatory aspect. We were actually able to have a dialogue like we're having, like you would informally with people. And again, had the ideal one, we'd be doing that, more of it. So it's just a balance of need. I'm quite concerned right now that Nick is not only our moose project leader, so right here. So he's wearing two hats. And we did that just trying to be realistic with what the needs were for the environment. Excellent point.
And correct me if I'm wrong, because I attended 3 of these meetings and I think I picked up different things every time. And then when I read through the emails, the multiple emails that seem to be somewhat repetitive. That seem to be a common misunderstanding in my mind. So introducing a fungus, which has not been fully studied yet, be somewhat environmentally irresponsible for us because we don't know the impacts it might have in other organisms in the environment.
Certainly at this point.
And not even certain it would be effective. Treating moose would be cost prohibitive. They would have to be captured to be treated, I assume, and which is stressful to the animal. Short term, I've got to treat my dog every month, so I don't know how you do that for the moose. And lastly, we're not in this alone. Maine and New Hampshire are having similar problems and are working on solutions as well. And right now, this is the solution that we feel is available to us at this time, until something better comes along. Did I paraphrase that right?
Yeah.
The other key thing is what it's saying to this population, let alone that there was a tip problem, still at a point where it still has to be managed.
So we're kind of mirroring off New Hampshire and Maine too, right?
What's that?
We're doing the same with New Hampshire and Maine, that they're doing the same thing.
We did the same research.
All the same results, and they're all having.
Maine is in one of their units doing exactly what we're trying to reduce the news numbers.
You said Quebec one time tried something and it was faster.
Quebec tried, because they, I mean, I didn't show this in any of the presentations, but Quebec has been doing similar research too. They were kind of behind everyone. Ticks are moving on. But they were researching moose and winter ticks as well, and they elected to treat some of their moose when they captured. I'm not exactly sure what they did. I know they put collars on some. They might have infected some as well. It doesn't work. The collar, you kill the ticks on the neck, but moose is so big that it's not very good. And if you were to inject moose with the livestock, get rid of parasites, you would have to do it every month.
Wondering if the tick conversation is adequate. If habitat is the limiting factor, if the habitat was a limiting factor, you're having let anyone they're at capacity. So what's the point of even the educational part of the ticks?
Well, I think the key is that, you know, the ticks are the reason we're trying to reduce. If it wasn't for the ticks, we want to stay about where we're at. A different recommendation. Not to say we wouldn't still be hunting moose or hunting moose, but it would be there. We wouldn't be trying to reduce.
Right, so the numbers.
Oh, correct me if I'm wrong, man. My blessings. The whole goal here, Brian and others, is to have moose healthy on the landscape sustainably a long time.
Right.
That's why we're doing this. We're concerned if we didn't do intervention right now with management, that the trajectory that we're seeing with health, especially when you're seeing all the cats die from these infected moose, that the clock is ticking on maintaining moose in Vermont and elsewhere where the numbers are there with the outcome. So that's our real concern, is trying to sustain their numbers for long term, not just for the next 10 years or 15, longer term. So that's, you know, we may be coming to you at one point if knowledge changes and things to recommend more permits or fewer to do that. But that's our management goal. And for us to, that's why we would never come to you and say, we want this many permits for the next 3 years. That would be, we just can't do that because we got to get that data every year. We got to collect the best science information we can and then move forward. The biggest challenge for us beyond collecting the data is bringing the public along and making them aware of all the complexity. And I think as I talked maybe to somebody in this meeting some time ago, this wasn't on the radar 15, 20 years ago. We were having the discussion then debating how many moose do we need to harvest because of the influence they have on the habitat. We started to see those. It's very similar with the deer that we see. So yeah.
And
so I'm wrong, correct me.
no, you're right. You're exactly right. And whenever 15 years ago, whenever we wrote our previous big game plan, our goal for E was 1.75 moose per Vermont. That's what we thought the habitat could support. That's ideal, most habitat. We're at 1.75. So we are where we want to be regardless.
Any other questions from Nick or the departments? Thank you, Nick. So with that, if there's no other discussion on the board, do I have any, I have someone make a motion to relative to the proposal?
I will make a motion that we go forward with the department's recommendations on 2020. From a breakdown as presented to us.
Okay. All of those in favor will signify by saying aye as I go through the roll call. Brian McCarthy. Aye. Jamie Dragon.
Aye.
Michael Bancroft. Aye. Brad Ferlin, aye. Dave Robillard. Aye. Anthony Matthews.
Aye.
Marty Van Buren. Aye. Michael Polson. Aye. Brian Bailey. Aye. Jay Sweeney. Aye. And David Dean.
Yes.
Ayes have it, 11, and 0, 11, nothing. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I just point out this subject for you, the dialogue with the commissioner and our internal operations, we are going to try to move forward to have permits, the drawing for the permits a little earlier this year to give people more time to plan for their hunt. So tomorrow, hopefully everything goes right. The lottery will be live for people. We'll do our press and outreach after hearing the results from tonight. And we're just tentatively hoping to have the lottery drawing on July 20th to do that, which so maybe it's a week or a week and a half earlier than normal. But we've been slowly moving it up. What happens is most people always seem to be for the last week, no matter what the deadline is. But our experience is talking with anyone who tried to go moose hunting now, it is much more challenging than it was a decade or two ago, because some people might be hunting just cows or bulls. The more time we can provide the hunters to plan their hunt, the better we feel we'll be keeping their hands controlled.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're getting some requests from folks online to speak louder or to speak more through microphones.
Okay.
So just,
You guys have a microphone up there?
These are the two microphones. This one, you can move around a little bit or just walk up to it.
Okay, we'll do our best to speak up, and if you don't hear us, just continue to let us know. Thank you. And I'm getting the message that Booth is here, so we're going to take a 10-minute break. It's not 30.
I think it's
30-minute break. And so it is 6 o'clock. We'll resume at 6:30.
Yeah, but the video is gonna keep going, just so everybody knows that they're still on.
Okay, so we will be back and the meeting will resume at 6:30. Thank you.
Is the recording still?
Yep, it is, yep. So the microphone is on and it's being recorded.
Is it going through those? Is it going through those?
It's going through them, but for one, people are so quiet, like,
Well,
people are getting a little quiet. I am too. So I think we're trying our best we can, yeah. Not going to. It's just a bit louder, yeah, I know.
Throw it up and drop it. I think
It's, you know, I'm still having a real hard time. I'm not. I know longer, but.
I know.
I can't, I'm never going to. I keep thinking a little bit better.
Just those 2 years of bearing.
Yeah, yeah.
Story of my life. So, yeah, it's, wonderful hiking, but yeah, it's still all single. It hasn't been bad, you know. I wanted to get my last couple of years.
I see that was some biologists too. So much. I'll take a shot for the team.
Sorry. That's it for me. I see these kids, they 20 something years old. Yeah.
So, yeah. I think all the new wardens should be forced to go as you either are, or if they don't get rehired the second year. They don't have that. She said yeah, so, absolutely. All the state fairs. But I do. It's great. I had in my truck, so I'm doing a show for some fifth graders Friday. And you can't be just quality. You got us here. Hurts for us. Yes. I said I'm health for $75. Yeah. No, so that's had some really cool bars. That's because of the inside. This was nice. It's really great. Here. Steve. Right. Amazing. Should almost leave post. Oh, that's great. I think we should just that. Not that my head's special or anything. I don't ever turn around. Wonderful.
Happy to have you up the Cape. Look at that.
Yeah. Happy to be there.
What town you in? My first job there was the principal last year in February 2021. I was a finalist. The store owner, she didn't like me. They did own so bar.
So it's like, oh, yes. Yep. She didn't. I didn't just stay on.
Motor problems.
Her name was it a manager?
Oh, because you were negative.
She's from there now. She's there.
Gervais is all the Essex house.
Oh, Gervais?
Yeah. She's right there.
I don't know if she says it. I was one back in. And the day I said, well, if I have a second home up there, and live there,
Yeah.
take my wife and myself eventually.
Yeah. Just to be.
Yeah, I didn't do it.
And
So that was going to be elementary school. It was
Still school, of course, you know, pro kids, this might be.
still ride bikes. And they carry fishing boats.
Go outside. Yeah. That school, lots of kids there in COVID. I mean, at Woodstock, like union kids, like they went up 25% down there.
Because everybody moved up from
They
that south.
they already owned the house, second home, so they moved up to it.
Yeah.
Uncle Stowe and.
Even out of there, it's changed culture. It's not crazy.
Yep.
It's great.
I think people enjoy birds more than touch them. I'm in schools all the time and. I think it's real, but people have my traffic classes now, saying it's something real, it's just sit there virtual.
It's not meant for
Yeah. One first word.
Yes. So, oh,
So is that $75 per mitten?
there's the sign.
Okay. I get a tan for just $30.
Thank you. How much did you have to?
And then basically when I'm done, I got it's like probably 100 for shipping. I probably got $120 in total.
That's just not bad. No, it's not bad. It's in the somewhere. You know, I've seen it.
So I often give them away for presents, you know, or families all got them, you know, the big picture of space fishing and stuff.
Abby Sarah down the road.
Oh, yeah.
She's been making her own stuff lately, you know, just, playing around. That makes some nice stuff. Coyote fur hat, fox fur hat.
The thing you didn't see, a couple of years ago, she came and did a recruitment thing in our career technical center. And why would you see it? She brought the most amazing artifacts and things for the kids to be involved in. She did a tremendous job. She built 2 8-foot tables. She had a doe on the way up the interstate. She took out 2 fetuses and brought those in, you know, just, you know, it was a little gross, but that was what her job was. And was she effective? She's a sharp person.
Yeah, you know, I'm glad to hear that because I have to do her at some point, you know, and I actually, we had a district meeting yesterday. And I told her, I said, look, you know, I got to be perfectly honest with you. When you got hired the first trip around, I was not your biggest fan. Came back the second time, I was still not your biggest fan. I actually requested not to have you. I said, but I said, seeing what I've seen the last couple of years, and seeing what I see now as your supervisor. I was going to have 10 more, like, that girl works. Wow. Yeah, and she is just on the go, nonstop. Boom, 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 you know.
And she's so athletic, and she's that's like me thinking, show the key to that gate, go.
She's a machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a good kid.
She sticks with it, you know. She's grew up in Newberry where I live there, actually.
Yep.
I'm still lives there.
Yeah, what's that road? What's that pool that you want? Layton Hill?
Layton Hill and Wallace Hill, yeah, she lives.
Yeah, she lives in Wallace Hill. Yeah.
But get to it, she was up there rabbit hunting one time, also, she comes jogging up the trail, and snowmobile trail, the husky dog, but
Tyler had a little more of a biological job that wasn't so seasonal, you know, right? If there's room, it's timber tires,
Yeah,
or whatever shop is out there.
he's got hired full time.
Oh, did he?
He did, yeah.
He's a great guy, too.
Yeah. I haven't met him yet.
Yeah.
Said I've been going around 1 day a week, and my plan is, now that the weather's getting a little better, is getting down there and working with each one of the wardens for a day or a couple of days.
I appreciate that from some. Some people, you know, grumpy old men leave me alone, but younger people, you get a lot of young people. So.
Yeah, you know, and like I told them all yesterday, it's like, you know, it's, in today's day and age, it's, everybody's so quick to tell you what you're doing wrong. You know, or if you step on it, they're really quick to point it out. It's like, you know, it doesn't hurt to let you guys know when you're doing a good job. You guys are all doing a good job.
Roger didn't have that opinion back in the day.
I know, yeah.
No, it's good that you have that perspective.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And I would argue that internal hires moving up the chain, is how you keep that perspective.
Yeah.
Could have sat back and said,
Well, you know, I thought about it too. I was like, you know, I'm happy being sergeant. I don't need the extra headaches coming off of being a supervisor's butt. You know, I kind of like my last couple of years to feel like I'm in more of a position to make a difference. You know, and if it's stepping up and being a mentor to the board, you know,
so good for you.
yeah. So we'll see, you know, it's,
As long as Jason doesn't see top football.
what's that?
You know how long Jason might keep working?
You know, I don't really know.
Based on the business.
Yeah, I don't
Of course, he
really
didn't
know.
come into it as a 20-year-old. He'd already had a job in the military or something, right? That came in after, so.
Yeah, I don't. The good news for me is, you know, in 9 months, every day's Friday after that. But I told my state's always good to me. I'm not gonna go back on my word.
Yeah.
And if the, you know, if the retirement bill changes, it's passed some legislation, if you know, states not 57. Or at least lock it out until I'm 55. That's what I told them I'd do.
I retired from teaching profession last year at halftime. So it's a full retirement, but I'm working halftime because I can make $40,000 or
When
something.
did I last say? I saw it.
October, we saw it at the Trevor.
Yeah.
But state employment, the benefits are.
I counted my days. I only have 22 and a half more years left. So.
Your boys, what, 4? 8?
22 and a half more. It stays as is.
Like Mark Scott there, I think he's still at Girl College or something.
Uh,
But one, he's still working.
You know, both my kids are gone out of the house, you know, one's 29, one's 23. But my new wife, I've got triplet 16-year-old daughters. I kind of like,
But they love you though. You're such a good guy.
well, they do. Yeah,
That's super good for you.
yeah, they're having.
I got 2 stepkids in the 30s, but biggest stepdad I was the best decision I ever made.
Yeah.
Like my wife. But
It took them a little while to adjust to me and my personality, you know, their dad is a little dry. Let's just say he's certainly not me. Total opposite, polar opposite of me. So, yeah, they would look at me like I had 3 heads there for a while. Now they just, they're good kids.
You ready for your presentation, sir?
it's going to take about 2 minutes. It's going to be simple and burn a little, so get it out there. I don't need to go crazy, so.
And then we'll let the tires on someone's tires. Did we just talk about this? Yeah, I don't want to. Oh my God. Is there any pizza left over there?
Yeah, there's plenty of pizza. Plenty of pizza.
That's why I'm in here.
Yeah.
I'm married to a woman 7 days a week. I never eat
pizza again. Okay with that. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to adjust to having working Monday through Friday and weekends off. It was day shift all the time. In bed by 8 o'clock.
Was it 8 o'clock? Isn't that your night shift?
Yeah. Yeah. What's that? 5 years. That's a trade. 50, right? God, you're 25 cents. You got hired before I did.
Yeah, I'm 20. Yeah.
19, the 24th total deputy time.
We got some, I think.
I've got a pork roast in the crock pot when I get
You
home.
win. Yeah, you win.
Pork roast and potatoes.
I just got a smoker. And
Which one you get?
I got the expensive, I got trouble.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
You fish,
I do.
trout, that's a game changer for the
Yeah,
smokers.
exactly. Yeah, I've got, what's funny was I had to order a pay visit to my trout farm this winter. And I'm like, well, that's it. I ain't got none left. And I went out yesterday. Giant brother, salt crabs and bugs at his house. Yeah, I do want to smoke either salmon fillet or trout or something.
Like, especially like,
You would make homemade pizzas. I'm not buying some of those non-breads, the roasted garlic and
Nance, that I'm talking about?
yeah, nan, or however
Yeah,
you say
yeah,
it. Those. Put our pizza sauce on or whatever you want on it. Throw it on the Traeger.
I just did, I did ribs and,
Jess got it for me a couple years ago. I've done so much stuff on it. It's just, wow.
I've never heard of pizza on
Go to Walmart and get the loss pellets. It's the same thing as the Traeger pellets. A lot cheaper and they've got certain variety.
so I've been looking at them and like, so the Traeger pellets have got like fillers in it, flavors added. But Tractor Supply has, it's called Bear Mountain. And they're 100% hardwood. I bought them.
I've been using the Petition blend. Pellets
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used, there's a guy with Matt as a, he's won a bunch of awards through Traeger. He's got his own pellets to them. Those were the first ones I used. They work real well. They have to, but they're not expensive.
About every 3 to 4 cooks, I pull the grate off, pull that cover off.
No.
Shut back that out.
I cleaned the heck out of mine. It was a fairly long cook. I did 3 racks of ribs. And it was like it was a 3-2-1. And they did a little longer to get to 2 to 5. It was, I tore it apart back and forth.
I can't quite off.
I'm worried that I didn't, like I saw some of the sauce and drip. Oh, it's in the body. I just don't want that charcoal.
Right.
That's enough something else.
Yeah, I haven't, I haven't run into any issues yet. Of course, I use the Traeger liners.
Yeah,
And then I've never had anything.
It doesn't quite, it's kind of weird, like mine, it's pretty close, but it doesn't 100% cover it. Just a little bit, and of course, that's what.
We're just, little roll typical.
As I say, I'm looking at them, I'm just.
That's what I've done.
I couldn't turn it down now.
I'm used to it though.
Yeah, I've done, gosh. A lot of stuff. A lot of stuff.
I've done some trout, I've done a fire, just wood fire, just like solid brook and a little bit of. It was so good.
Yep. Yeah, I did some walleye fillets on it last year when I got back from Ohio. That was pretty good. Normally I chunk them up into small pieces and I use that Louisiana fish fry. And I usually fry everything, but I smoked it.
Colorado, you just go now, I think we were down in the big drainage, and down in there was a nice stream that cuts through it. And the pools down there were sugar balls, big trout. So I had one of those little survival bowls, and I just had some freeze dried blankets. Yeah, exactly. It was cheating before. They were so good. The water was so cold. After about the fourth day, house my was really good. Yeah, that's great.
Time for something different.
Something different.
Always have that.
Yeah, I'm headed back to Ohio in 2 weeks. Go back out with my brother on Lake Erie.
That's where you're from?
I'm from Michigan.
From Minnesota.
My brother still lives in Michigan.
What part? Do you eat?
No,
Uh,
well, my brother lives in Plainwell, Michigan, but where we're from is southwestern corner, just above South Bend, Indiana.
Okay, yeah.
Place called Sister Lake, Wajack area.
I spent a lot of time with my husband lived there. He went on. It's very different, I know, the Thunderbird.
My brother he started probably 5 or 6 years ago going to Lake Erie walleye fishing.
Really?
And I drove out, no, it's been probably 7 or 8 years. I drove out about 6 years ago, my first time. And we were before Clinton, walleye capital of the world, I guess. Well, anyways, I had a retired Indiana work buddy that I knew had a place. He chartered, when he retired, he bought a charter boat, and chartered walleye fishing trips. So I called him, I said, hey, Lyle, where do you fish out of down here? And he said, I'm just west of Fort Clinton. I said, why don't you check out the hotel? I'm in my house right now. Come over and stay with me. So ever since then, I go out and stay in his place right on the lake and fish out of there. Use his boat a lot.
No, but just.
So we have about 2 more minutes until
Okay.
we're supposed to convene, and the whole time the microphone has been going and it has been recorded.
Excellent. Okay.
I haven't said anything stupid.
Now people know about your walleye spot.
We ever see one bike when it moves?
It's a bomb one.
Gonna give up, go south or something?
You know,
It's soft.
I don't know if you went and moved or the drive. This sun is nice. And I don't think he followed him.
Get down to Carolinas or something.
I'm trying to figure that out. I'm not sure where he's at. So I don't know if he, but I haven't seen him in a while, so I don't know. if he-
I haven't seen him in a while. I used to see him
Yeah, okay.
periodically.
Ran into different birds last week.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, my God, I haven't seen Dick, well, I haven't seen Dick since we haven't done this work with
I mean,
him.
that's, can you see him?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
stepped out of a swim meet down in Fort Charlotte. So we're down there and I texted him.
Well, we can do.
Built a new house in Fort Charlotte.
We can have him come serve here.
So is he winter down there?
We're gonna have to- I'm gonna ask them to get on the screen.
Yeah, they stand. Stand or sit right here, whichever. That way, right online.
But yeah, I can't turn it off.
Is it? Are you too low or too high? No, I want to be able to lean back. Pull it out. Sorry. All right, that worked. We needs to be published. Other than that, I like that.
Lots. Not a problem.
Oh, suffer.
So, yeah, pizza, I don't think there's that. And this is here comes here.
Oh, no, I didn't.
So, yeah.
Okay, I think we're all back. Is everybody all back online? So, as far as you know, our members of this.
Board members, Jamie's here.
Jamie's here.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, to resume with the agenda, the next items on the agenda are the petition acknowledgements and discussions. We have two petitions tonight. We have a fur bearer management rule on trapping recommendation. And then we have a petition to have a regulated coyote hunting. So the first is going to be the fur bearer management rule. And what I think how we want to proceed, and for those of you who have been on this board longer than I have, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what we want to do is we're going to give the petitioners 10 minutes to present their petitions. And we'll be keeping time of that for that 10 minutes. Then we'll allow the board members to ask some questions for clarification on if there's any uncertainty about what you're trying to achieve with the petition. We don't really want to debate the merits of the petition, but more just make sure we fully understand what it is that you're petitioning and what you're trying to get to. And then we will have a response from the commissioner on the same petition so that we have an understanding of where the department stands on the petition. And then we as a board will have a discussion and decide what our next steps are on the petition.
Chairman, I have a question.
Yeah.
Maybe this is for the commissioner, but it's my understanding that both these petitions still are making pace in the legislation right now, and that they are still being pending and acting on. Is that correct?
So it's fair to say that there's similar action going on in the State House. But not exactly, and neither one of those bills has made it out of the House yet. They made crossover. And so, which is, I can comment later after they've been presented, but I think I know where you're going.
Yeah, and I guess, Chairman, my concern is that a board taking action on potential laws where we have a legislative body that may proceed with, that may conflict with what we may decide.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. We don't know what the end result of the legislative process is going to be, and we don't want to be redundant. So I think the department can bring us up to speed on what they do know about those bills that are working their way through the legislative process. And that may be very well, that will be part of their response to us. And we can take all the as we have people in the department. Okay.
David, Ian has a comment.
David?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to get my hand down here. Yes, there are two bills that have passed the Senate. One, in fact, mandates commissioner to present to the board a revision of the trapping regulations based on the best management practices from the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, if I understand that language correctly. I mean, that organization's title correctly. The other one is to direct the commissioner to work through the board and establish a set of rules that deal with dogs hunting coyotes. Both of those are out of the Senate and have been, at least according to the legislative page, referred to the House Committee on Natural Resources, Fish and Wildlife. And the only reason I know about them is that there's other legislation that I am working on with a coalition of organizations that is in front of the Senate committee. And so I have spent over the last week, 10 days, a lot of time monitoring what has been going on in the Senate committee. So there are serious legislative efforts underway.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for that. So again, I think the commissioner probably is as current as anybody on what the status of those bills are. And I believe even testified on at least one of them today in front of the House Fish and Wildlife and Natural Resources. So I think he's probably as current. So I think, again, part of their response, they can make sure we are all up to date and at the same point in where those bills are. And we can factor that into our discussion on how we want to see. Okay.
Well, I'm wondering if it wouldn't be feasible for us to table these petitions until the legislator makes their decisions, and which may make these petitions move forward.
I don't think they'll make it move. In fact, they become parallel, and we're going to be back. So let's take the hound hunting. I'm sorry, traffic petition. If that bill, as written, passes through the Senate and is signed by the governor, this petition is in alignment with it. We don't have to accept everything in that petition verbatim. We can then act on it as you deem appropriate, potentially guided by new legislation. So we're heading in that direction anyway. I think it makes sense not table it. And I say the same for the other petition that's likely that's going to be presented, because I'm pretty sure that bill is going to make it out. And a part of that bill is to have consideration of the quiet season, if you will. This petition talks about it, but it doesn't mean you have to accept it all or nothing. So it puts us on the right track, and I think it's we need to take action on these both anyway. So I see no reason.
David, you're looking into your computer. Are you going to say something, or do you want to move on? You're muted, David.
I was going to ask Allison to stick the microphone in front of the commissioner when he gets to talking about these bills, just so I can hear clearly. And no, I wasn't going to join the conversation other than what I've already related.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
I can.
All right.
Okay. So with that, we'll proceed with the first petition is the fur bearer management rule on the management best practices. And I think with us today is Bruce Martin, BTA Vice President. So if you could come up here and sit, and I'll make sure the microphone is in front of you, and then everybody can hear you accordingly.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Bruce Martin, I'm the Vice President of the Trappers Association, and I'll keep this quick, under 10 minutes for sure. So the Northeast Best Management Practices Program was a 30-year research project. Many of the Vermont Trappers Association members, everybody who tested these traps in Vermont, were part of the association. Many are directors, which are still currently directors today. So I discussed, they tested many different traps, many different varieties, came up with many aspects of some traps that are very, very productive and best management practices. And BMPs were always discussed as just the best management practice, but never as regulatory. Though not regulatory, Trappers Association has been pushing this because a lot of the trappers, we are using best management practices traps that have been studied for years. They're in our toolkit constantly, and we see them as very good utilization of materials for traps to catch and release animals safely and with good health. So those not regulatory, with this research and experience of using them, we see the beneficial aspects of it for their health and safety. So since we have been pushing this for years, the BMPs are great to use, even though non-regulatory, we thought it would be a great idea to actually make everybody else in the state compliant with these BMPs that we are saying these are what we're using. It's not necessarily what has to be used. So we put a working group together, got together years ago, and have been working on things iteratively for months and months and months. Come up with language and the aspects of these BMPs that we think should be moved forward on the traps that are going to be used from a group. Many people in our association talking about this. So it's not just one team, it's definitely a solid work group of people that are using these traps for years. And what we've come up with are 6 items for traps to be set on land that would require the following. The jaws are padded, offset, laminated, or have jaws of minimum thickness of 5/16 of an inch. Base plates feature a center chain attachment. The trap can be adjusted to hand. There are at least 2 swiveling devices in the chain. The anchor trap has a minimum of 12 inches, maximum of 18 inches of chain to the point where it exits the ground once an animal is caught. No foothold trap shall be set on land with a spread of more than 6 1/4 inches as measured inside the jaws. So like I said, this is based over years and years of experience and studying many different traps that come up on the market. And a lot of the manufacturers are actually making traps to follow these BMPs perfectly. We can't endorse any single trap at all because there are many parts of traps that have a great aspect to them. So that's why we're saying that these features should be where it's taken forward as we move forward on any regulation. That's really just it. Like I said, it's really more the fact that we've been pushing BMPs for years. So why not, since we've been pushing it and seeing how they are the best for the safety of the animal and health of the animal that are caught, then why not make this regulation across the state of Vermont and have everybody using these great practices. So like I said, it'd be brief, so I'll turn it over to all of you.
Yeah, quick question. As someone who doesn't trap, I see the word jaws and I think teeth. I'm assuming that there's no teeth.
No teeth are allowed in the state. Every 24 hours, except for traps that are set in water, concrete traps set in water.
The jaw, you have the bit of thickness, but it's the thickness of the jaw, or is that the very surface?
That would be like the surface area of the jaw for the animal's cock. So it's very surface.
Just out of curiosity, how many First of all, I don't know how many trappers there are in Vermont today. But what percentage of trappers today do you think work within these best practices? Best management practices. Any idea? Just
I would say
not as much.
probably a large percentage of them. The ones that I talk to mostly are using practices. So I'd say a large percentage.
And the 6¼ inch, no, definitely should be large for that. Is that to prevent, what's the, that to prevent larger animals or humans or from stepping in the traps? What's the 6¼ relative?
Well, I mean, when you're set and it's open like this, yeah. We just are for traps that are going to be set on land. There's really no need for anything larger than that. So it would be better for the animal because these are designed to hold a big, you want just that reason. Anything larger, that's good. System.
Yeah, right. I'm a nonprofit. I guess I'd like to know, I know we have a couple of factors with us, right? How do they, I'd like to know how they feel about this. Why wouldn't a trapper want to see this? Bill or Kevin, how do you feel about these?
It's up to you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
Taking public comment here.
We aren't. We haven't been. We weren't intending to.
I don't know, I'm asking the board, there's trappers on the board.
Can I maybe inject here? Yeah, that's okay. I know the Trappers Association met and voted on this. How many people were in attendance?
Of the attendance at our director's meeting probably had.
And was anybody opposed?
We were. Like I said, this has been talked about for years and like done that over and over with our group, and this was iterative. But our directors had seen this language before presenting it to everybody, so they had after we had discussed this, they knew this was coming out as this.
Just, oh, do all 6 of these changes affect every single fur bearer that's trapped from otter to coyote, or is this just addressing a few different?
These are for proposed caps only. That is the vote.
So does this affect any beaver or anything like that?
No, it's not. No.
This is just more for, I think here, if we were to accept this, I think would then go to public comment, and then there'd be more, that'd be the invite for the trappers if they had a concern. At which point they could then voice their concern, whether they like it or didn't like it. And then we would come back for a second vote on it, as to whether or not we're going to accept it based on that public feedback.
The big question is there a problem? This is a solution to that I'm not aware of. In other words, is this going to fix something that's wrong with prevention regulations?
Well, I think this is promoting safety and health of the animal as cost. So these, like I said, these best management practices are promote the safety and health when an animal is caught and released, and we're not sure like who is out there not using them. As an association, we're pushing for this health and safety from across the state, but there could be some that are using traps that don't meet all of these requirements. So let's say
I understand that, and I think it's great. Not the best management project, but best management.
BMPs.
Thing is there a problem? Is there a reason you're asking us to adopt this as statute because of something that's going wrong with other people, or is it just trying to up the game and make it best?
We're trying to do what's best for you. This is the thing.
Nancy, I think you have your hand up.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you for that description and for the careful thought that the Trappers Association has given to promoting best practices. What I don't see addressed is how the animals are euthanized. Could you speak to that once they're in the trap, how the humane euthanization is taking place?
I'm not sure how everybody does that. I do it my own way, and I'm a person who uses a gun. That's how I do it.
I'm sorry, I missed it.
What I use to but we are focused on euthanization, correct? That's
I still miss. I presume that a lot of trappers are using handguns to euthanize.
that. Yes. Great.
And what are the other methods?
There are some other methods. There are some like features that actually like water systems that use some with drying the part of the BMPs to actually dry sets of part of BMPs. On land trapping, I don't really know anybody who doesn't use them. To be honest with you, that's really our preferred method.
Would the Trappers Association be willing to consider some guidelines in the euthanasia process?
I'm not going to speak for everyone on that because that would be a discussion point that I want to talk about. If there's something that they want to come to us to discuss, then we could, but I don't want to speak for anybody on that right now.
I will raise for the record that I personally am concerned about the process of euthanasia, and I think that there are humane guidelines for that process.
Thank you, Nancy. Kim, I see Kim Royer has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. I'll just say, Nancy, that the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies has been working on humane dispatch guidelines. They're working with some veterinarians. It's taking a little bit longer. It's complex. It's not as straightforward as we all would like. But I'm hopeful that in the next year or so, there might be some guidelines that will be more along the national level rather than just Vermont. So we're waiting for those as well.
Thanks, Kim. I appreciate that.
Sure.
David, I saw you had your hand up. I don't see it now, though. There it is.
Yeah, I sort of wanted to go more to process than a particular question about the trapping and how it's done. And I want to direct the question to the commissioner because has the latest information. As I read those bills, you have until 2023 to make a recommendation, and then we, the board, have until 2024 to adopt trapping regs that are no less stringent than best management practices under the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. Is that the timing as you understand it? And do we have a position relative to that timing? Because that goes back to the very first question in this discussion about should the board move forward given that there's this activity going on in the legislature.
David, can I just interrupt just a minute? Can we hold that question just for a couple minutes?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Yep.
There are more questions for Bruce while he's up here that we can take advantage of his time in his 10-minute slot.
That's fine. Thank you, Commissioner.
Are there any other questions or?
Just one last question. Are these practices in alignment with what other states are doing around the country?
I would want to defer to Kim on that, but I don't believe that any other state has BFPs as a regulatory base at this time.
Okay.
You're muted, Kim.
Yeah, Kim. Oops.
Great.
You're muted.
Sorry. Bruce is correct. We'd be the first state to regulate.
Thank you. Okay, if no other questions for Bruce. Bruce, thank you very much. But thank you all. And we, the board and the department will be deliberating and we'll let you know. You'll hear soon.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
Okay, so now as part of the, with that, I'd like to hear from the department, their response to the petition. And through that response, David, you may get your question answered here directly from the commissioner or from the departments as part of their response. And if not, we'll make sure we get to it.
Commissioner, go
The first question.
Yeah, good point.
So I want to first of all commend the Trappers Association for taking the initiative to vote as a group to file this petition. I think it shows their true concern for the activity that they participate in. They should be commended for that. So thank you for pressing the vote. And as you know, there is legislation in the works. I fully anticipated that some version would come through, but as I still want to call you Representative Dean, I apologize, David. He's right. Timing is out there. That's a fairly long time frame. There's nothing that says we need to wait. If we believe, and I do, that this is the right thing to do, then I feel like we should move the petition forward, which opens up the issue. And there'll be plenty of time for public input, a lot of other questions. We can address some of the issues that Nancy brought up as well in part of that process. And so if we comply with whatever legislation comes through before their timeline, good on us and good for the activity. That's kind of my general opinion. Mark, would you like to follow along?
No, I appreciate what you're saying. I'll add from my experience working with the board through changes to current regulations or new regulations is, and what you just saw right now in just a couple minutes, all kinds of questions that were kicking through your mind to do that. So the first step in my mind is that we get an indication of the board that you want to pursue this petition. What that means, that sets the gears in motion more for my staff, the commissioners, law enforcement, outreach, everyone else in the department to start working on this internally. The last thing we want to do is rush to a new rule or regulation, the thoroughly internally vetting all of our experience. You all know Kim Royer, 40 years of experience working with people all over North America on this topic as well. Many of us others have been involved in different ways. We want to work collectively, come and have an inner process with you, the board. My experience has been when we've done this with deer management regulations, previous fur bear rules that we've amended to do, as well as bear hound and bear hunting, all hunting of bear. It's taken an inner process for us. You want to make sure my recommendation to do the rule, do it right. And what you were thinking of, Dave, is absolutely right. The next step formally for this board would be to take a first vote on regulatory language. And that's language that we have to craft. We want to make sure it's carefully well done. It's enforceable by our state game wardens. It takes a lot of work on Catherine as part to work through that. And as well, an education process with you folks so you actually understand what the regulatory language does and does not do. So we welcome this petition. I got to echo what the commissioner said. Our staff's been working with Vermont Trappers Association for a long time. I used to work with them in my educational role. You can't think of a finer group of people who care about the fur bears in the state of Vermont. They have worked with us, and I applaud them for coming forward to take the next step, in our opinion, of managing fur bears. We may be the first state in the country, I don't know, but Vermont's the first in a lot of things, in my experience. So I would encourage you to vote positive on this petition, and then the department will regroup and try to give you a tentative plan on how to approach this. And obviously I want to say Representative David Dean's comments to that, we'll be closely monitoring too what goes on with legislature to do that, making sure whatever the board does is in sync with the statutory authority. So that's, I don't mean to be long-winded, but I really want to emphasize that I'm hoping you'll vote affirmative and then not rush to try to get a first vote done on this rule. It's going to take some time and give and take. So,
David, so another question I have is, we had opened up that, well, this board had opened up the four-barrel rule just prior to me coming on, this is probably 5 years ago. And I think in that interim, I don't remember, but I think we may have, or maybe we did table some other trapping petitions because we weren't opening up the four-barrel rules at that time. If we're opening up this four-barrel rule again, our trapping will for now, do those other petitions now come in? Do we now address those? If there are any, I don't recall.
yes, David. Okay. So that's another point why we want to go back and revisit all the petitions that are coming forward. That's the difference, tabling it is putting it off until you decide at some point down the road, you got to open up the rule. In this case, we're not asking to table. We want to start the work. And that would mean looking at those petitions that you folks have already tabled.
So to understand that, so if our step as a board was to vote to have you take the petition and come back to us, maybe when the legislative session is complete, those bills have been passed, we know exactly what is required coming out of the legislative process. You take that information and roll it into what we're asking you to do with this petition and come back with a more comprehensive path forward on how to deal with the trapping rules.
Absolutely. That would be our preferred route, and take in things David said. In the meantime, we'll report regularly to you on our tentative planning process, so you all know, and as well as the public will know, when we're going to try to attempt to get things done. Because the last thing is for us to have this kind of intelligent discussion, say, 3 months from now, without having an iterative educational process with all of you, it's doomed for failure. So we will continually report back to the board and bits and pieces that are digestible. And first, we're going to try to flesh out all the issues and deal with that, and try to get a sense on the nature of where the board is on their content knowledge of this to do it.
So just from a timeline perspective, if that was to be the path forward, then assuming the legislature is out of here in May, early May, hopefully April, but maybe early May or sometime in May, then bills need to be signed by the governor, and then eventually it's in law. Yep. And that would be sometime probably by the end of May or early June, whenever.
Correct.
And then when we expect your department to be able to come back to us with a more comprehensive plan on a path forward.
So I'm hoping by your May board meeting that we're able to present, that's my hope, a tentative plan schedule of how we're going to do all this.
Okay.
If legislature stays in session through June, they never done, well, then that's probably just going to push it back. But it's just been a successful approach that we've done before. And again, I'm going to put tentative in front of it, because some things may come up that kind of push us back or we're on schedule. But if it was straightforward and easy, we'd be with you tonight on language to start the process. But we have every intention of hopefully seeing some type of movement on best management practices for training. That's our intention. And I think we need to look at, I think David brought up a good point. There's been a bunch of petitions tabled, that we need to look at to do that as well.
David Dean?
It's so far, Mark, thank you for your discussion about, how this might go forward, even with the legislation in place or not in place, or who knows. But as a new member to this board, I do not know what you mean that you're going to start an effort. How long would it take? you know, in terms of, I don't know, first proposal back to the board. You said something about the May board meeting, but that seems awfully quick on an issue as complex and how would you say it, electrically charged as this one.
So the May, David, was when I would like us to have a plan in front of you with benchmark dates, when we would be so the first goal.
Okay, I got it. That's when you would be able to answer my question.
Yes.
What's this going to take in terms of the board's timing?
Exactly. And then
Okay, thank you.
Meetings, hearings, we'll have all that discussion with you. Where do we hold the hearings? You know, how do we conduct them on your behalf? Because it would be a board hearing to do that. So all of those things, David. And just follow the process that, in my opinion, has been quite successful for the department and the board in the last 10 years.
And I'll just close with saying the legislature always hopes to adjourn in May or earlier. But don't count on it.
Okay, any other comments or questions for the department? Path forward.
I'd just like to, board members who possibly skeptical of this, the BMPs, 3-decade process, $30 million plus spent with the good of tracking as part of our heritage. And that a tremendous amount of effort was put in nationally, National Trappers Association, and all the states to make it a better process. I would encourage everybody to do their own research that's on the board, see the effort that was put forth. That in conjunction with the Vermont Trappers Association. They've been in the forefront of trying to do the right thing. All the resources. It's important to have a big role here because wanting to manage our resource that is valuable to all of us that's in this board. So.
Anybody else? Any other thoughts? Okay. Looking for a motion. Yeah, I would like to have a motion on, well, whatever you want your motion to be. Yeah.
I would motion that the board request the department start that plan forward of opening the trapping rule with this petition in mind for us to revisit, or not revisit, but actually.
That's yeah, a couple of seconds over there. So, let's see. Okay. Everybody hear the motion? Anybody have any questions about what the motion is?
Nope.
Any other comments?
Could you repeat it again? I'm sorry, I missed part of that.
Thank you.
The motion would be to have the board ask the department to open up the trapping rule and specifically to bring us back this petition and any other petitions that were previously tabled, replace them, for us to move forward with, move our act on.
And we have a second. Any other comments before we vote? David, you have a question? Comment?
Yeah, I want to make sure that the motion reflects that we've authorized the department to begin the planning process to respond to the petitions. That this is not a vote, a first vote or anything toward adoption of anything. That this is strictly telling the department, yes, we are interested in addressing these petitions in a professional manner with your best guidance.
That was quite clear, I second.
Yeah, well, that's,
That is the motion, Dave. That is the motion.
Okay. And, you know, it's also now on the record. So, okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, if not, I will take roll call. And all those in favor, signify by saying aye, opposed nay, and anybody abstaining, abstaining. So all those in favor of the motion presented by David Robillard, signify by saying aye. Brian McCarthy. Aye. Jamie Dragon.
Aye.
Michael Bancroft. Aye. Brad Ferlin. Aye. David Robillard. Aye. Nancy Matthews.
Aye.
Marty Van Buren. Aye. Michael Colson.
Aye.
Brian Bailey. Aye. Jay Sweeney.
Aye.
David Dean.
Aye.
Ayes have it, 11-0. Okay, thank you, everybody, and thank you, Bruce. Okay, next on the agenda, we have a petition to have a regulated coyote hunting season. And with us, Chris, I believe, is going to be the presenter. Chris, you still with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can, yes. So again, a reminder, you're gonna have 10 minutes to present the petition and make sure that we all have a fair understanding of what it is you're trying to accomplish with your petition.
10 minutes, don't
Oh.
include questions. Correct.
Correct. It's just 10 minutes to make your presentation on the petition.
Can I ask for clarification on her organization affiliation?
Absolutely. Yep.
Sure.
Question, Chris?
Yes, yeah, I have to reiterate David Dean's remarks about it's very, very hard to actually hear what you all are saying clearly. So yes, I heard that. So I understand that most of you probably don't know who I am. I'm actually here because Jane Fitzwilliam could not be from the Coyote Coalition. So she asked me to fill in, and as a coyote researcher for the last 35 years or so, and also as the representative for Project Coyote in New Hampshire and Vermont, I appreciate the ability to say a few words about this petition. So 35 years ago, I began in the Great Lakes states researching wolves and coyotes and their relationship, and then got some education, a master's in conservation biology on this very thing. And then I moved back east and taught at UNH for 10 years in the Department of Natural Resources. And during that period of time, I had an opportunity to buy a sheep farm that had been plagued with coyotes. The guy that owned the farm apparently did not know very much about managing sheep and keeping coyotes off sheep. And so I took it upon myself to run an 18-year-long experiment in exactly this. And that farm was situated sort of in the heart of a pack of coyotes that had learned over the course of 10 years just how good lambs taste. And I did not want that kind of behavior to continue. And I wanted to see if I could, in fact, over a period of years, change the behavior of coyotes. And I was able to do that. And I'm not going to go into how, because that's not what we're talking about. But the best education that I had about coyotes was actually learning how to coexist with them as a sheep farmer. That's my best credential. In 18 years, I never lost a lamb. I never lost a sheep. I never had to have a coyote trapped or killed or anything like that. It was just in the will to coexist with these guys, and my innate understanding that if I could learn to coexist with them and they weren't eating my sheep, that they would probably defend their territory like they always do and keep other problem coyotes away. And I think that that's actually what happened. It all worked out really well. So thank you for hearing me here. I think that closing a season on coyotes is sort of the way of the future. There are states all over the country that are moving in the direction of a better understanding of coyotes, a keener understanding of their ecology. And that seems to me to be the thing that is most lacking. The assumption that you all sitting on the Vermont Fish and Game Commission have a fairly good understanding of the ecology of coyotes is something that I'm sort of assuming right now. Would you say that I'm right? Do you feel pretty confident in that?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So the good part, there are a lot of good parts about this petition. October 1st to December 31st, I think coincides with the trapping season for coyotes. Am I right on that?
No, it does not.
What's that?
No, it does not.
Oh, it doesn't. Okay. It is the time of the year for coyotes when dispersers, yearlings generally, are leaving the pack and going in search of a territory or a mate themselves. So coyotes are definitely on the move during this period of time. One of the best aspects of this particular season for me is the fact that following December 31st comes their mating season. And so they mate January to March, sometime for a week, a glorious week. During that period of time, they are mating with their mate. And then follows, of course, the pupping season and the pup rearing season. The importance of this cannot be underestimated. And for me as a sheep farmer, this was especially important. I knew that come March, April, May, coyotes were denning. They were extremely territorial. They would be guarding that den. It would be a bad time to let dogs anywhere near the den because it causes huge uproars and can actually cause injury to dogs. But more than that, once those pups are out of the den, they're moved to a central spot on territory where they're taught what to eat. And for me as a sheep farmer, this was the critical thing. If the pups learn to eat natural prey, they're not going to learn to eat my coyotes. And I didn't want any of those pups that I knew were out there to get a taste for lamb. Out west, where people have been dealing with coyotes for 150 years, 200 years, right? They are well accustomed to this animal. They have discovered, with studies too, to back this up, that when the coyote social structure is disrupted and adults are killed, especially during pupping season, the pups are likely to not get the instruction that they need on what to eat. And those animals are likely to become nuisance animals. And a nuisance animal means going after chicken, going after lambs, for people who have small dogs, going after small dogs, etc. So understanding the ecology of coyotes is really critical in order to be able to coexist with them. So from my perspective, and I'm a recovering sheep farmer. I no longer have sheep, but when I had sheep, you know, I grew to understand how critically important it was to understand their ecology and to be able to predict what they would be doing at certain times of the year. What I have heard frequently over the course of my many years talking to people about coyotes is that there's this notion that there are too many coyotes out there, and therefore we have to control them. Ask anybody from out west whether you can control coyotes, and they're going to say no, you can't. The more you kill them, the faster they reproduce. And I know that you've heard that before. If you have any questions about the mechanics of that, I can answer that for you. I'd love to answer that for you. And any takers on that? Okay.
You have 10 minutes, so you can use your 10 minutes how you wish.
Okay, I don't even know where I am in my 10 minutes.
You're at 8 minutes.
Oh, okay, so I've got 2 minutes left. So the number of coyotes on the landscape, and by the reckoning of your Fish and Game department, your Fish and Wild department, they reckon somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 coyotes live in Vermont. And we reckon pretty much the same thing in New Hampshire, although you have better habitat than we do for a number of reasons. Coyotes are controlled entirely by prey availability and not so much by habitat, because they can live anywhere. So in this way, they're very, very different from other wild creatures, far more adaptable. So I think that talking about the control of this animal is a red herring, frankly. It sets up this immediacy or this urgency to have to control them, whereas you know, the amount of habitat and prey are going to pretty much dictate that. So when you hear people say there are too many coyotes on the landscape, that is a social construct. That is a social carrying capacity for humans' tolerance for coyotes. And as my last comment, I would say that the Fish and Wildlife boards and the Fish and Game agencies have the largest megaphone in this country in terms of instilling in the public whether they should fear coyotes, whether they should accept them, whether they should get better education on them, because they're not going away. And
Okay.
so,
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
Any questions for Chris about the petition or the intent of the petition?
Is this a petition only regarding the shooting of coyotes, and nowhere does it have to do with the running of coyotes?
I think, are you asking me that?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't have anything to do with writing the petition. So I think that your question was whether the petition was about hunting coyotes.
Hunting coyotes and hunting coyote dogs.
I didn't hear it. I can't hear it.
The question is, does the petition relate to just the general hunting of coyotes, or does it also include hunting coyotes with hounds?
No, as far as I understand the petition, it doesn't have anything to do with hounding.
Jamie, you have a question?
So I have the petition right in front of me, and I just wanted to make sure that the petition states that this is basically just to establish a hunting season for the coyotes.
Right.
Okay.
That's right.
So I do have another question, and I don't know if you have information on this or if this is a question directed more toward the commissioner or Mark, but I'm wondering, do we have information on how many coyotes are taken yearly?
The answer from the department is no.
Okay. So to follow up on that, is there a way that we could potentially get that information or start recording that information, having hunters or require hunters that take coyotes report that?
We could do that through rulemaking process, and that's something that we could, when we get a chance to talk to the department about their response, we can ask them and talk to them about that.
Okay.
Any other questions for Chris? Hey, Chris, I'm not seeing any other hands. So thank you very much for your time and your presentation.
Thank you.
Let's say it's the position before us is simple, that they request a Vermont to establish a regulated hunting coyote hunting season from October 1st to December 31st. This is to allow for recreational hunting opportunity and optimize utilization of the animals killed. The rest of it is just substantiation for their stance on this. But that's as far as I see, that's the extent of.
Okay, Commissioner, would you like to share your department's response to this?
Yeah, again, I will note that in the pending legislation regarding hounding of coyotes, which I did testify to today, there is a portion which requires the department to look at some sort of, give consideration to a season on coyotes. And so, again, this is just like the previous one, we just action on. We're heading in this direction. This petition opens it. It doesn't mean, by the way, that one, we could take, look at it, consider it, decide no, decide October 1st to October 31st, or a completely different time. We're not locked into the petition, but it is a way to open the rule, which we are likely to be doing anyway. And so that's my recommendation. That direction. And if Mark wants to add on.
Can I just ask a quick question before?
Yes, go ahead.
Which rule do we need?
Well, yeah.
Further rules?
And appendix 10.
Excuse me, I am completely deaf. If there's a conversation going on, I cannot hear it.
So Brad just asked which rule would be open. After that, it would be under the per barrel rule.
You know, I kind of, as I see this is almost two things. One, we have a petition in front of us that they're being asked to act on. We as a board, as I understand it, we could open up, we could have our own motion to say to the department, we would like you to research a possible coyote season. And then we can also take action on this particular petition if we don't like this petition, if we don't like the parameters of it. We can do that. So we can act on that and still yet have another motion and ask the department if we're fine, go forward with researching coyotes.
It seems to me that what we need to be doing here is answering this. They expect reply from this section. And I would suggest that everybody say we are actually going to be opening this to discussion. I don't believe that there's any way on earth that we can give them what they're asking for at this point in time, because it hasn't been processed yet. But I would think that the correct response might be that the petition, as it turns out, we're opening this.
So Mark, are you going to?
I'm just going to second what Commissioner said. We welcome the opportunity to look at coyote hunting in Vermont. I think we've already publicly stated, some of us were concerned with some of the activity going on with hound hunting coyotes. It's nowhere near regulated like we regulate deer hound hunting to do that. So we welcome that opportunity with the board's interest. And where we go with all this, it's like to remind people, when we just redid all the bear rules, it basically ended up so that if we had rules in place that were more enforceable for our state game wardens to do that, the Bear Hound Association came to us with one sole interest. That was to eliminate deer hound hunting from people out of state or push it back. So we went to them and we said, no, we're going to look at all the issues. So we had many, many meetings with members who submitted the petition. We tried to better identify what the problem was, and then develop the rule with the board to fix the problems the best we could. So that took quite a while, to be honest with you, but that was the history. Where I think we ended up with a much better bear management rule from our perspective. And I know we feel that way biologically, and I know Trevor, I know from law enforcement perspective, they gave you folks a more enforceable tools out there. So that's how that came. Really, we never did go with what the original petition was. But we looked at it, we listened, we regrouped and went and worked with the petitioners quite a while, with everybody else too, with the board. It was I won't tell you how long it took, but we got there eventually.
So I think what I heard was that doing something similar to what we did with the other petition. Is that we're not denying this, we're not tabling it, but we're going to take this petition, forward it to the department, and have them take a look at it in conjunction with everything that's going to come out of the legislative process, and come back to us at some point in possibly May, at the same time, or I don't know the timing we would expect, but something close to that, with a proposed plan of how we would approach this from a timeline perspective.
Is that a motion?
No, well, it isn't yet. It was just, I was saying it just to make sure I understood previous comments and seeing if we could take the same process as we did with the prior ones.
May I make that a motion?
You can.
Okay.
If that's a clear understanding, then I'll second the motion.
What is the motion?
Nancy, do you want me to say what I said, or do you want to?
Well, I can restate it, make sure I got this right, that we use the petition to inform our own request to the department to explore the viability of instituting a hunting season for coyotes in the state of Vermont. Did I get that?
Pretty close. What I would say is yes, they take this petition, they take this petition, and in conjunction with what's going to come out of the legislative process, and come back to us with a proposal on how to proceed with the possibility of a closed season or a way to regulate and manage coyotes.
Great. Nice amendment. Thank you.
I still second it.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments? Brian?
I personally would rather see us, I don't know if we actually have to table it or not, but table it, if you will, and see what, if anything, comes out of the legislature.
That would be another motion. You could file a motion saying that you'd like this tabled until such time legislative acts. And
We've got a motion in a second. So
we have to do the first one.
Yeah. Motion on the floor.
My personal opinion would be wait. See if the and they pass legislature case that may get viewed by the governor.
I'm sorry, I did not hear that.
I do, based on what I've seen in this session.
That's my.
Okay, thank you, Brian. David, did you have comments? David Dean?
I simply did not hear the previous speaker, and I wanted to hear what he had to say.
You referring to me, Dave?
Yes, Brian.
I got, okay, can you hear me now?
Yes,
I simply said, in my opinion, I would prefer to table this petition until after we see what, if anything, comes out of the legislature. Take it up after that.
may I comment on that, Mr. Chair?
Yes, you can.
The legislation, as it's passed the Senate at this point, deals with hounds and hunting coyotes with hounds and requirements for hounding. I think I just created a word. And it does not actually deal with a season, except for the use of dogs. It doesn't deal with a general season for coyote. And I may have that wrong, but I don't think so. I think it's just a limitation on when hounds may be used to hunt coyotes. So I don't think that there could be a conflict. I think there's less of a conflict in this case than there was in the previous situation with having a bill moving through the legislature, and we decided to go ahead, at least with the preliminary planning of an approach and the timeline to reach it. And I believe that's all that this motion does also.
Nancy, you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. Maybe David, that clears my question up, but I was going to ask to better understand what the advantages would be of waiting. And particularly now, because it sounds like this bill, and Kim, correct us if we're misunderstanding this bill that's already been passed in the Senate is not dealing with the same question we're dealing with right now. So I don't understand how that will be to our advantage to wait.
Is it true that the bill does cover season?
It does have seasonal activity as it relates to the hounding, but once you open it, we're gonna have that discussion.
But is the legislative bill, though, does it address just hounding or does it address?
So the way it's written, you want?
No.
I'll do that.
I'd like to defend my second and also address mine.
Hold on.
Oh, you go ahead.
So finish. There's a question.
So switches pages. So the way it reads, okay, Fish and Wildlife Board shall adopt a rule regarding pursuit of coyote for the age of dogs, either for the training of dogs or the taking of coyote. The rule shall include at least the following provisions. And then there's a number of them, including the board shall consider whether to include within the rule required by this section provisions related to seasonal restriction and payment.
So the question is, do those last 2 points relate just to hound hunting or to coyote hunting?
Yeah, it falls under that section.
Under hound hunting.
So it sounds good like that last bit. That's essentially says whether or not they'll be restricted season. That's exactly
law that's coming out of there does do is address the regulations. In addition to that. And I, so,
First, yeah.
I just wanted to reiterate, this is a request that Vermont establish a regulated coyote hunting season. That's the only part that really matters, I think, right here. And that's what I am seconding, Nancy, is that we open this now for discussion, as suggested by our staff, because it's time to revisit this. Whatever comes out of legislature comes out of legislature. But this is an opportunity for us to reopen this and begin our discussions to get a jump on it. I think we'd be wise to get on it sooner than later. And we're not agreeing to anything by saying we'll take this into account in our deliberations. All we're saying is thank you for your motion. We'll consider that as part of the process. Is that correct, Nancy? That
David?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that was my understanding with this motion. It's the same as the last one. We're asking the department to plan it out and talk with us about what it's going to take in terms of time, resources, and et cetera. It's not going to do anything to countervail or be in opposition to or contrary to what might come out of the legislature. We might have to broaden out our discussion if that bill passes in its current form to include the issue of hound hunting, but it certainly wouldn't be in, opposition to what the legislature is putting forward.
Okay, any other thoughts, comments? Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the floor. And so all those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Could you restate the motion? Because there's been so much discussion since that came out.
Yep.
I'm gonna be clear on what.
Yep. Nancy?
I knew you were going to do that. I'm going to defer to you because you had the clearer language, please.
Okay. The motion was that we forward and the petition to the Department of Fish and Wildlife and to have them come back to us in the month of May with a path forward to address this petition and anything that may come out of the legislative process relative to coyote hunting and a potential closed season or anything that relates to, again, what comes out of the legislative process.
And other petitions related.
And
Other petitions. I mean, this opens the rules so that someone else can submit that petition, but they can be.
Yeah, absolutely right. And anything else?
I would give them I would give the department a little more wiggle room than putting May into the motion. As I mentioned, the legislature may not have left town yet by the time we hold our board meeting.
Well, I think the motion is to have them give us an update in May, and that update may just be the legislature still in process. We haven't made any path forward progress yet. So we'll
Okay, as long as we're not expecting a product per se.
Right. That's fair. Carmen, good with that? Okay, all those in favor of the motion as stated, signify by saying aye. Brian McCarthy? Aye. Jamie Dragon?
Aye.
Michael Bancroft? Aye. Brad Ferlin, aye. David Robillard? Aye. Nancy Matthews?
Aye.
Marty Van Buren? Aye. Michael Colson? Aye. Brian Bailey? No. Jay Sweeney?
Yes.
David Dean?
Yes.
Okay, ayes have it. 10 ayes and 1 no. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, on that discussion. Next on the agenda is the commissioner's updates.
Good evening. I'll be brief. And you all know I testified today, talked about it 100 times on S281, which is the hound hunting coyotes and dogs. And what I'll say about this bill, most of you probably read it. It started out initially as an outright ban on the activity, as did S201, which was an outright ban on foothold trap. And so, for a lot of hard work, folks at the department, working closely with Senate Natural Resources, we were able to work with them to come to compromise. That's what these bills are. So with hound hunting, my initial statement about that bill was rather than banning it, let the department regulate. We don't have that ability right now. And so they agree. And in no small measure, due to the efforts of Kim Royer, both of these bills. But here are the essentials of this. First thing you should know is that the bill will have a moratorium on hound hunting with dogs until this board finalizes its action with respect to the rest of the bill. And that will go into effect if this bill passes in time, effective July 1st. So the first part of it is it'll require permit, just like hound hunting bears does. And in the current form, there's 100 permits to be issued. 10 of them can be out of state, 10% can be out of state. And there's a fee associated with these. And that portion of the bill has to be passed by the legislature because neither you nor I, the department, have the authority to require permits and fees like that. So then there's a second portion which talks about protection of land and has a somewhat progressive trespass section. And if I told Brad I don't want you in my property, not allowed, and violates 365 days, that's a first offense. And then there's this provision for second offenses, and it gets progressive. And the first violation is 5 points on the second violation is 10 points. That's proposed. And the Fish and Wildlife Board rules will be developed, and they are as follows: a limit on the number of dogs that may be used, prohibition of relaying, the legal method of taking coyote pursued with the aid of dogs such as rifle, muzzleloader, crossbow, or bow and arrow, a definition of control to minimize the likelihood that dogs pursuing coyotes enter onto land that is posted against something or pursuit of coyotes authorized. Provisions to encourage the person pursuing coyotes with the aid of dogs to seek on permission. Required reporting of every coyote killed during pursuit with the aid of dogs. And the one I mentioned before, the board shall consider whether to include in the rule required legislation related to seasonal restriction and then the effective date. So I can answer any questions about that.
What's going on the firearms options there? Was a handgun listed on there? No, I hadn't made no same note. So you trap a coyote and the encouragement is to shoot with the handgun, but if it's big, they should.
No, so let me make this clear. These are things we need to consider.
Okay.
They're not limited.
They're not. Okay.
But thank you for raising that.
Right. Okay.
So I can expound.
For you, reading it, it seemed like they were dedicating tools back on the board, they had to include them.
It sounded like it was a restriction.
Because it sounded like it was something you have to consider.
So today in testimony, they talked about putting in shall consider. So that's what I thought. The trapping bill is very similar to, I didn't bring it with me, but again, that started out as an outright ban. And essentially it requires the board to work with the trappers on developing best management practice. So that's essentially what that is. We're well on our way on that. The other bill that was in the Senate is S-129, which was the bill that would reorganize this board. And they were going to, and I'm quoting, to ensure geographic representation, the board would have had 12 members. So in my questioning, I said, you have 14 now. How does that work? Which two committees, which two counties don't you want represented? Ultimately, they opted to not pass the bill. And I believe I'll be getting a letter from the committee looking for the department to demonstrate ways in which we will continue and enhance our listening to voices that may not always agree with the department. So that's fine. So that bill is dead. The other bill that was in the House is H-411, which is the wanton waste bill. That has made its way over to the Senate. So and those are the three bills that are active over there now. I think what's important to note about all of these is the way we started and where we ended up are completely two different places. And the department is able to make progress in working with the committees and recognizing that, yeah, we understand the issues, we hear all the issues. And we will adapt to a certain extent, but we also, this is about as far as we can go. And they met us. And part of the issue was spending time with them. And we had a trapper spend time in the chair of the committee. And when he found out what trapping was really like, not what he had been told, he was like, no, this the BMP thing makes sense. So the lesson here for us is to, and I've been saying this all along, is to be deliberate in our conversations, be calm and rely on facts and science. And that's what I mean. It doesn't mean we disregard all other voices. It means that we consider them when we look at what's really going on, what the truth of the matter is. To that degree, Kim Royer was outstanding when it came to the trapping. If any of you haven't seen her testimony, I recommend you go back and look at it. It was absolutely fantastic. And because of that, getting senators to listen to what's the truth of the matter, not the mythology of the matter, we were able to bring bills that would have significantly altered, really significant. The ones that are a modification of what we're not. So that's where we are in the State House. We still have a lot of work ahead of us, but I'm proud of the work we've done. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
I'll just add to when you were talking about being very deliberative. One thing that I listened to the testimony one day, I'm not sure that anybody on, and I'm not sure, they may, I don't know, but my words, I'm not sure that any of them truly understand how the Fish and Wildlife Board process works and what the rulemaking process is and the involvement of the public that was doing coding the process, and the involvement of the department specialists and scientists, and everybody that's involved in that decision-making process. And again, there are people who go in front of those committees who these petitions have not been addressed, have been tabled or denied, and it gets represented to that committee as, you know, their petitions just went out down in flames or went up in flames. And then there was a gentleman who was there speaking about, who clearly has a lot of experience with the board. And he spoke a lot about a petition that he had put forth and the very deliberative process that he'd gone through over the course of about 18 months, including, you know, public inputs, you know, going through the board, through the health department, going through the legislative approval process through LCAR, and then back through. So a lot of them just completely lost sight of how the board works. So the more that we can share, I think, with our representatives or people who just don't know how the board process works, I think it serves us well, and I hope you do well too.
All stated. You know, I'm a person who believes that the facts and the truth generally win out. And just given the opportunity to meet with people and explain the facts of the matter in a calm, deliberate way tends to be way more effective. And I would dare say that a fair number of those committee members now do have a better understanding of what you do and what you don't do. And that it's a huge commitment to be on this board. David?
Yeah, just to quickly, any holdovers on the House Natural Resources Fish and Wildlife Committee understands. They understand how the board works. They understand, I can't speak for new members. I have no idea what kind of training the new chair has put them through. And in terms of the Senate, you have two of the senior members of LCAR sitting on the Natural Resources Committee. They understand, folks. That said, I have listened to or had people testifying to me for a lot of years, and I would just like to congratulate the commissioner and Kim for a really good job. As I mentioned earlier, I was paying attention to the committee, and it was my background music as opposed to elevator music. I was listening to the Senate committee, and both did an excellent job addressing those people who in fact might not have understood. Going back to your point, Mr. Chairman. So I just wanted to get that on the record. Good job.
Thank you for that. I'd like to wrap up my report by really acknowledging the great work that Mark and his staff did at the public hearings. I was incredibly impressed at Mark's ability to wrangle a bunch of catamounts in a room talking about something they care deeply about. Nick explaining everything more about ticks than anyone ever wanted to know, but it's important. But the job you did, Mark, David was there, Chris, and there were some wardens at all of these. It's really outstanding work. It's representative of what this department does, but I don't think people understand because it's done not in the spotlight. And so I do want to spotlight it tonight. It's that kind of stuff. We got staff here staffing this meeting tonight. That's what makes this department run. These are people who truly care about everything we do. Out on another evening again, and you've made my transition into this job so much easier than it could have been. So I want to acknowledge each and every one of them. Thank you, sir.
Commissioner, ask you a question.
You sure can.
What if you want to go back in person meetings?
So we are in person.
I know we are, but these hybrid meetings, they have stolen a great deal of the gravitas, not only in this board, but in public boards. And that we could have petitions presented by out-of-staters who aren't here, that don't even come here. The fact that, no offense, David Dean, he's got the biggest face in the room, he's got the loudest voice. It completely, and you all admit it, it's true. It completely changes the tenor of the meeting. I would really like to see us get back to where we talk to people, everybody is on the level, even feel, and we could get our work done a lot more quickly. What is it that tells us to continue this highway? If somebody wants to know what goes in, they can listen.
So I'm going to defer maybe part of this to the general counsel, but I think it has to do with accessibility and make our hands tied.
It is true that we have some responsibility to offer reasonable accommodations for people who request them. It doesn't happen very often, but they request them. And we have gotten quite a lot of feedback from people requesting them. That we offer an electronic version. And I get it. I think it's always better to talk to people face to face. As in one another, but I do think that we do have some obligation to offer. People have gotten used to that convenience, if you will.
It's an inconvenience as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, I think, if I may, that we need to do something about the ability. David probably didn't hear what you said. We're just not set up for that. So I think some technology improvements need to be. We're going to be doing this, especially the board members are going to be doing this by Zoom. That we need to do something different.
Yeah, we definitely will take a look at that. Did you hear that, David?
I'm sorry, it was burbling, and I didn't hear it clearly.
Well, the point was, if we're going to continue to do meetings like this, we're going to have to improve the technology so that everybody can hear.
Good. I think you might talk with legislative council, because they're the ones that have put the equipment in the committee rooms at the legislature, and those are really clear. Just a thought. And I do intend to attend in person. It didn't work out for today.
Your trout season's opening up. We won't see you again.
Yeah, and I could be traveling up north and getting to some of those rivers.
There you go. Any other questions for me? Comments? You all have my email and my phone number, so if you want to. Yeah, I don't want to say that one.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. The next item that was added to the agenda here, the last one was that it was left off was the roundtable discussion.
Turn off recording.
Okay. All right. So thank you, everybody who's attended. Members, board members, please stay on. We're going to have a roundtable discussion. And thank you, everyone else, for attending.